Thank you so much, Jack. Thank you for the intro. I'm so excited to be with you all. I'm going to try to transition to my slides here while talking, which is easier said than done. But this is one of my favorite presentations to give and one of my favorite topics to talk about. It's fun to talk about email. It's fun to talk about subject lines in particular. But maybe more than any of that, I just love this little brain graphic. It just gets me excited. So I have it probably way too many times throughout this presentation, but hopefully it's as aesthetically pleasing to you as it is to me. I just like it a lot. But let's jump in. We're going to talk about subject lines. We're going to talk about 5 ways, 5 mental levers that you can use, and I'm going to say anyone can use to increase opens, but more importantly, increase opens that lead towards donations. So the things we're going to talk about, you don't have to be like an expert copywriter or the best, most creative wordsmith in the whole universe to write an effective subject line. We're going to walk through 5 levers and 5 steps that you can use every single time you sit down to write a new fundraising email in order to improve opens, again, that lead towards donations. Because I don't care if you get a whole bunch of opens, if there's not leading towards a metric that really matters to your bottom line, they might not be worth it for you. So let's jump right in. When I first put this webinar and this presentation together, it was actually for a conference just over a year ago. It was the last conference that I actually attended in person before the pandemic. And so as I was preparing for this talk, I wondered, what's my actual personal open rate for emails from this event? So I went to my inbox and I did a quick search for the name of the event, and here's what came up. So there's all these emails in my inbox related to this specific event. So they're sending me lots of information that I need as a speaker. They're sending me info, all the marketing info for the conference, and sort of everything is coming into my inbox. I did this search, and here's what I found. I'm marking an X by all the ones that aren't actually about the conference directly or aren't from the conference. They're just tangential conversations that I had about it, but not actually from the event. So the rest of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 emails is what I received over the course of a couple of months about this event. And when I analyzed my personal open rate, I actually had a 76% open rate, which I'm sure this event and the people marketing it and promoting it, they'd be thrilled to have a 76% open rate. That's amazing. But the deeper question I was trying to understand is on a personal level and on an individual level, is there a difference in my brain between what I'm opening and what I'm not opening? What do I actually open and engage with? What prompts me to do that? And what are the factors that are other email, or maybe waiting till later to open it, or maybe just archiving something immediately because it doesn't feel relevant? I'm wondering, what is the difference between opened emails and unopened emails for me personally? So to analyze my inbox, I started by highlighting all the emails that I did not open. I'm going to highlight the sender names for you, and feel free to jump in the chat. What's the trend that you see? Do you see a trend right off the bat of emails that I did not open versus those that I did interact with and actually reply to? If you see something, if you see a trend right away, drop it in the chat. But these are the ones I didn't open. They all came from something like NRB conventions or Gaylord Hotels reservations, or more from NRB conventions. Not from a person, Doug says. And we see that as we look at the ones that I actually did open. Let's highlight those. Here's the ones I opened, I replied to, I interacted with. I'll highlight the senders for you. Some from Amy, more from Amy, even more from Amy. There's one registration, but there's one from Troy, and then there's a bunch more from Amy and Amy and Amy and Amy and Troy and Tim and Doug and Amy and Amy and Amy and Amy. And you probably start to see a trend or a pattern. There's only a couple of these that I opened and interacted with that were sent from a brand name. And you can see one of those was this urgent deadline to book my room today or else the hotel block was going to fill up. And one was my actual registration confirmation. So 2 essential emails that I needed to open in order to actually get to the event. It's interesting. So if we look at these side by side, 100% of the emails that I did not open were sent from a non-human sender. They're basically sent from this little robot on your screen. But 83% of the ones that I did open were sent from a human being. They're sent from a real person. Now, this is just me, but what do other people do? And Litmus conducted this study a few years ago at this point, but the data is really interesting. You kind of see the breakdown when they ask this survey question. What's the first thing that you look at when you decide whether or not to open an email? And here's the breakdown. 42% of people said they looked first to see who the email is from. I'm curious, I've kind of, planted a seed, but feel free to drop in the chat. What do you look for first? I'd be curious, even just on this webinar today, what do you look for first in the inbox to decide, are you going to open an email? Are you looking at who it's from? Are you looking at the subject line? Are you looking at the preview text? Are you looking at something totally different? Again, drop it in the chat. I'd be curious to know what you do specifically. And then we'll look at a few different experiments to see what people actually do in reality. Because sometimes what we say we do isn't always what we actually do in reality. It's not always how we behave. So I'm looking through the chat here. I see that most people are looking at who it's from, who the sender is, looking at the combination of who it's from and the preview text. That's really important. Who it's from and the subject line, name of the sender. Most people are looking to see, what is the human element here? Who is this actually from? Do I trust this person or do I trust this brand? We're looking first at the sender line. Now, again, just because people say something in a survey doesn't mean that's actually how they behave. That's not actually what they do. We need to put these learnings from surveys to the test to see what actually happens in reality. And so in this experiment, version A is being sent from Kent Lastman. Subject line says what today means. Version B is sent from a brand, Competitive Enterprise Institute. Subject line is exactly the same. There is a difference if you're savvy and you start to read the preview text. There's some slight nuances and differences in the preview text, and it's because it's a holistic experiment. Version A, we're trying to see, does sending from a human increase or affect opens in general? And to do that, you actually have to take a holistic approach and write an email like a human, as opposed to writing an email like a brand. So version A and version B, the primary difference is version A is sent from a human and sounds like it, and version B is sent from a brand and sounds like it. And what they saw, just in the high level of the inbox alone, is that version A led to a 28% increase in email opens. Now, next after, we like to think that we're pretty savvy and smart marketers. And so we ran a similar experiment where we were actually emailing like a rented email list. And we ran basically the same experiment, but we wondered, what if we included the name of the sender and the name of the brand together? Because if we send just from Tim, who's our founder, we run the risk that maybe people don't know who Tim is. However, they might know the brand of next after. So we wanted to run this experiment and see what would happen. And we felt good about this. We've like, okay, we can increase familiarity and maybe a sense of authority or something like that, and a sense of trust by including the brand name. And so we'll send it. And what we saw was a 9% decrease in email opens, but on top of that, a 20% decrease in clicks, which then starts to imply that the way that someone perceives your email, even just in the sender line, can impact how they make decisions later down in the process and in the funnel. So if I go into an email knowing this is some form of marketing, because only marketers are going to put Tim Kachuria, next after, then I'm going to read your email, maybe with my guard up a little bit, because I know you just want me to take some sort of action. Are you trying to sell me something? I don't want to be sold to something. I'd rather have a human relationship. So I'm here to tell you today, in short, that you need to send your emails from a real person and not from a brand. And you're probably at this point wondering, like, what are we doing? Why aren't we talking about subject lines? I'm here to learn about subject lines. Bear with me for one more moment, because there's one more thing I want to share before we dive into the subject line, and it's this. Right now, in this moment, your brain is receiving 11 million bits of information every single second. So I don't know exactly where you're at, if you're in the office or if you're at home, or maybe you're, I don't know where you're at, but you're looking at a screen, you're listening to me, you're seeing, some images on your screen, you're seeing my video, and you've got the chat feed up, and maybe you've got, kids in the other room that are working on something or making some noise, or maybe it's raining here, so maybe it's raining outside and you can hear the rain. You have all this information coming to your brain at once, but you're only consciously aware of anywhere from 16 to 60 bits of that information per second. Which, if we look at a conversion rate, which we like to do, that's actually a 0.00054% conversion rate from information coming to your brain to what you're actually conscious of. So when you look at an inbox like this one, how do you actually make decisions about what to open and what to get rid of, or what to save for later, what to mark as spam, what to delete, what to archive, what actually gets a reply? You're not going line by line, reading every single little detail and looking at all of the data available intentionally to decide, do I get rid of this or do I open it? You're going through and really in just a snap, you're deciding, I'm going to get rid of this. No, I'm going to archive this. Oh, I should open this. Oh, I should read this. Oh, I should take action on this. Oh, I should save this for later. You're making that decision instantaneously by sampling the data that's coming into your brain. The good news for you is that we know the core information that your donors are sampling in the inbox. Number one is the sender line, which we just talked about, send from a real human being. But number two is the subject line, which is where we're going to go. We're going to focus on that the rest of the presentation today. And number three is the preview text, which we won't talk so much about today, but there's a lot that we can do there as well to sort of authenticate and enhance both the sender and the subject line. Why should you trust me when it comes to subject lines? There are so many other blogs. There's so many other quote unquote experts and best practices and research and ideas out there as to like words you should definitely include in order to boost opens and words you should definitely not include in order to keep your open rates from tanking. So why should you trust me? And I'm going to tell you not. Don't trust me. Who cares what I say? Who cares what Nathan has to say? We want to look at what the data says. Now, next after we have this research library, we're constantly conducting A/B tests and experiments related to online fundraising to try and decode what works to increase giving. I pulled these numbers this morning. So today, this morning, it's maybe more now because this was like a couple hours ago, but we have 2,921 published online fundraising experiments in our library. Of those, 1,322 experiments are related specifically to email and email fundraising. And of those, 237 are specifically focused on subject lines and how you can improve a subject line. So we're going to look at a lot of experiments today. We're going to look at a lot of data. And I hope that you walk away with some really practical steps to actually improve your subject lines in a meaningful way that can boost opens that lead to more donations. Through this data, we've found that there are generally two ways that you can improve a subject line to leave an irresistible impression on a person in the inbox so that they have to open. Number one, you can appeal to the very specific interests of the individual and particular donors. And this is what this sounds like. So this is Paul. Paul is our COO. If Paul called me and left me a voicemail that sounded like this, "Hey, Nathan, it's Paul." He might actually say, "Howdy. Howdy, Nathan, it's Paul. I have a question about taxes and enrollment. Can you call me back?" This is how I'm going to feel. It's like, oh, geez, sounds so boring. I don't want to talk about taxes and enrollment like this. I'm going to wait till Paul either comes by my desk or he sends me a couple of messages in Slack, or maybe he calls me a couple more times. And actually, so I know it's maybe urgent, because this sounds boring and I've got other things to do besides worry about that boring stuff. But if he called me and he said this, it might feel different. "Hey, Nathan, it's Paul. I have a question about your paycheck and your health insurance. Can you call me back ASAP so I can get everything to you on time?" Well, now I no longer feel like, oh, that's lame. I feel like this, like, God, I need to get paid. I need to have health insurance. We've got kids at home and this stuff happens with kids and they got to go to the doctor and all this stuff. So I need these, and this is urgent and it's important and I need to take action on it right away. It's super relevant to me. This can potentially be very powerful. But the challenge that we would face is that you have to find some relevant and urgent and important angle for every single donor on a one-off basis, and it's not easy to do. You can't just pull that out of a hat. And you're trying to email probably a large email file. Maybe it's as small as 100, but maybe it's as big as 100,000. At either of those scales, this is almost impossible to do. But there's another way, which is good. So way number two is that you can appeal to the conversation itself. So again, Paul might call me. He might say, "I've got a question about taxes and enrollment. Can you call me back?" But what if he said this? "I have an important question that I need to ask you. Can you call me back?" The language is just a little bit different. It's pretty simple. It's nuanced. It's not incredibly specific just to me. He could call anyone on our staff and say something like this and probably prompt the same response of like, this sounds important. I should probably call him back. I don't know what it's about, but he wouldn't have said that if I didn't really need to take action on it. So I'm going to call Paul back, or I'm going to go to his office, or I'm going to send him a message and see what's this all about. He's created an expectation that there's something important on the other end. And that's what writing an effective subject line is all about. It's about creating a certain expectation that prompts someone to open and get more information, to move them towards the action you ultimately want them to take, which is to click and to donate. And there's 5 key levers that you can use to make this work. Here's all the brains I talked about. We're going to look at these 5 key levers. And number one is the idea and the element of mystery. Let's look at a few experiments to see how you can use mystery in your subject lines to increase opens. Here's the experiment. Version A versus version B. Feel free to drop in the chat. Which one do you think is going to lead to more opens? They have the same sender, Mark Bailey. Version A says, study the Gospel of John with DTS. Version B says, a special gift from Dallas Theological Seminary. I see people saying B, and I would hope so, because version B clearly feels a bit more mysterious. Version A is interesting because it basically tells you exactly what the email is about. It tells you exactly what the call to action is, which you might tend to say is like, that's probably better, it's clear. Oftentimes we tend to say that clarity trumps persuasion. We don't have to be abundantly persuasive, but we just need to be clear. In this case, what they did in the subject line is actually asking the donor or the recipient to make a decision based on limited information. Because I'm going to read the subject line and I'm going to say, do I want to study the Gospel of John with DTS, or am I not interested in that? They haven't earned the opportunity yet to even explain to me why it's valuable to do this. I might actually be interested in it, but I haven't been equipped with enough information to really decide. So I'm likely going to say no. Version B, a special gift, something interesting. It's mysterious. I need to open it to find out what that gift is. And by winning that open, then they have the opportunity to explain the value of studying the Gospel of John with DTS and ultimately leading towards more conversions that really matter to them. So here's what they saw. By adding that little bit of mystery, it's a mini mystery, not a big one, a little mini mystery led to a 37% increase in email opens. You can do this too by not giving away everything in the subject line, but leaving something to be desired as you open the email. Here's another example. This is actually from our own marketing again. So we're putting these things to the test, not just with nonprofits, but also we're sort of putting our money where our mouth is. We're putting it to work in our own marketing. And so in version A, the subject line says a new fundraising webinar you'll want to mark your calendar for. Very clear what the email is about. Version B says, Matt, I've been working on this for you. You don't know exactly what ultimate call to action is. You don't know what the ultimate resource is, but I have to open it to find out. Clear that it's interesting, it might be valuable, and I need to open it to find out what have you been working on for me. And by adding that little mystery, it led to a 25% increase in opens. Same thing as the last experiment. In version A, you're basically deciding right in the subject line, do I want a new fundraising webinar? Or maybe I am oversaturated with those because there have been so many virtual events and webinars over the past year, I don't need another one. But we haven't gotten the chance to explain why this one might be valuable for you. Adding mystery lets us do that. To activate mystery, you need to leave just enough information out of the subject line concerning the topic. Question from Nikki. I see there's a question about, can we share these examples in a document? I'm going to share a resource with you at the very end that's going to give you some different ideas to prompt you through these 5 different elements. So stay tuned. I'll share that with you in a little bit. But let's look at element number 2, which is utility, or this idea of providing some sort of value through the subject line and in the email to your reader and to your donor. But I want to ask you this question. Do you only check your email because you have to? You can think about it for a second. Are there times where you check your email just maybe for fun or just for some sort of escape? Or maybe I was at the dentist a couple of weeks ago and I'm going to sit in the lobby and I'm going to wait for them to call my name and I'm just going to sort of like browse. I could browse through Facebook, although I've removed that from my phone. So at this point, I'm just kind of like looking at email to see, is there something here that I can get done real quick? Is there somebody who needs a question answered or something I can help with? Because it makes me feel good to see that there's a new email in there and that I can actually help someone. The same sort of psychology and idea that applies whenever Facebook sends you some random push notification to get you to open the Facebook app and then just get lost scrolling in your news feed. It feels good. You get this little dopamine hit when there's a new email in the inbox and you can actually take action on it. Email can be just as much of an escape as it is a duty. You obviously have to go to email for your job in many cases, or maybe to pay a bill or to get that confirmation email about something you just bought on Amazon or whatever, but it can be just as much of an escape as it is a duty. And people often escape to email looking for a quick win, something I can accomplish now before that meeting in 10 minutes because I can't start into a new project. In knowing this, how can we actually write more effective subject lines? Well, we can try to provide someone a quick win in the inbox and do so via the subject line. Here's one example. Version A is sent from Candace Bowick. This is from the National Breast Cancer Foundation. The subject line says, stay informed about your breast health. Version B is a little different. It says, a new early detection guide. The emails are really the same. They're leading towards the same call to action, but the subject lines are different. The recipient of these has just subscribed. You can see this in the preview text. It says, thank you for subscribing to National Breast Cancer Foundation's early detection. So they're receiving the same email. They've just subscribed. Version A sounds like it's sort of leaving something to be desired. It's sort of like passive information. You can stay informed about your breast health. It's like, cool, I want that. It's valuable to me, but it's pretty passive. It's not something that's going to make an impact maybe immediately. I've got to wait till the next email or the next newsletter or the next blog post. Where version B is a little different. It says a new early detection guide, which is something that I can get value from now. I don't have to wait until the next newsletter, but there's a quick win here. I can get this early detection guide in this email right now. And by implying that value and utility in the subject line, it led to a 15.8% increase in opens. Here's another example. Version A here says a unique opportunity. Is an opportunity valuable? Well, let's see it compared to this one, a different kind of camp. Both of these, again, are the same email, same ultimate calls to action. Version A, again, focusing on an opportunity, which an opportunity can be of great value. A different kind of camp, adds a little level of mystery, I guess, but I don't really know what the immediate value is. I think maybe this might be some type of article or newsletter or something like that. I'm not really sure. And that led to a 21% decrease in opens. So the winner in this case was the one that implied more value. So two different ways to look at it, something like a free offer or an opportunity to be a part of something. You can activate this element of utility or value by implying there's something useful to your donor on the other end of that open. It could be a gift. Maybe you're giving them a gift around year-end time or something like that, or as thank you for being a recurring donor or something like that. Maybe you're sharing a free resource with your donor file, like a downloadable ebook, or maybe it's a quiz or a survey or a course, or maybe it's an opportunity to be a part of something. Even if it's a fundraising email, you can still imply value to the donor in that subject line and in that email. Because if I get to be a part of some special campaign to make a specific impact, it's a unique opportunity for me to invest in a cause that I care about. We can just position it as being value and valuable. So that's element number 2. Element number 3 is this idea of you, or personalization. Let me show you maybe a different experiment, not quite an experiment, but an interesting example. Let me know in the chat, which one of these are you going to be more inclined to open? Version A, if you will, the hand-addressed, handwritten letter, or version B? I'll wait to see the chat light up because I assume version A all throughout the handwritten letter. If I assume there's others like me on this webinar today, just as a curious marketer, I like to open the ones on the right to see like, okay, what's the new sort of charade to try to get me to take advantage of this $50 offer? I used to get all these things from Spectrum that was like the same type of like TV internet package, but every single month their packaging and their envelope and their messaging would change, but it's the same offer. And they're just playing these games to try to win your open. So I might open some of those because I'm curious, but I'm 100% going to open version A, the handwritten, personalized one, and I'm going to read every single word of that because it's written personally for me. So how do we achieve this effect in the subject line? We don't have the opportunity to take a pen and write in the subject line and the sender name and the preview text. What we have to do is find a way to naturally add the word you. It's very simple. Use their first name, so insert that dynamically, or write it so that the tone makes it feel personal. That's a little bit more nuanced, a little harder to do, but I'm going to give you some tools to help you sort of think about it. So here's an experiment. You've got version A, B, and C in this case. Version A says, it's not a duty, it's a privilege. Well, it doesn't use the word you, and it's not personalized, and it doesn't really feel like it uses a personal tone. Version B says, before it's too late. It doesn't use you, and it doesn't use a first name, but it feels maybe a bit more personal and human than version A. And then version C maybe puts it all together where it says, I want to help you. It sounds conversational, it sounds personal, and it uses the word you to imply this is written specifically for you. And by using that element of personalization, this you feeling and tone and word choice, it led to a 25% increase in email opens. But pay attention to how this doesn't stand on its own. You can actually combine this element with other ones in order to make a more, even more meaningful impact in your subject line. So let's look at one example, packing utility and you together. Version A and B are sent from Greg Laurie. Version A says order today to receive for Mother's Day, which is like fairly transactional. It's very clear what's going on. Not necessarily trying to pack value into it. It's more just a reminder, and it doesn't feel very personal. It's pretty clear that this is a mass email. Version B says an idea for you. Ideas have great value, and it's personalized. It's for me. And by packing those two things together, they saw a 7.9% increase in email opens. So these elements don't just stand alone, but they can be packaged up with other ones to make it even more impactful. Here's the idea of mystery packaged up with personalization. Devotionals for the Christmas season, again, it tells you exactly what you're going to get. You're deciding right here in the subject line, do I want these or do I not? I'm going to open it or I'm not. You don't get the chance to explain why it's valuable and important. Version B says a Christmas gift, mysterious because I don't know what the gift is. I need to open to find out. And it's a Christmas gift for you, Kevin. So sort of this double level of personalization, using the word you, using the first name. And this combination of mystery and personalization led to a 22% increase in email opens. And if you're paying attention to this, one of these first experiments, you see this personalization is actually woven into this earlier experiment as well, where we said a new fundraising webinar you'll want versus Matt, I've been working on this for you. This subject line only works by using that personalization. If you just said, I've been working on this, like nobody's gonna open that email, but it's personal, it's for you, and it's mysterious. I need to open it to find out, what have you been working on so hard for me? I need to find that out, and it led to that increase in opens. So to activate this element of you need to show that the email was written for your recipient personally. Even if it's sent to a mass list, we're trying to craft our language to be more empathetic, more human, and more personal. So you can either use personalization, like inserting a first name, use the word you, or try to craft a more personal tone, or maybe all three if you can. Element number 4, the idea of recency or time relevance. What we're trying to evoke with this element is this feeling. Ready? Dun dun dun! This just in. That's kind of what we're trying to go for, while still being authentic, which we'll talk about in a moment. But we want to activate this idea of recency using time indicator words. So some examples, really simple, the days of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You could say yesterday, or coming up tonight, or tomorrow. You need to really make, that's a long subject line, but using these words like today, tonight, tomorrow, or just calling out good morning, or this afternoon, or this evening. All these different time relevant indicator words can prompt someone to sort of have a timeline for when I need to open this email, as opposed to having the excuse that I can open this next week. We're using time relevant words to sort of put some boundaries on it to say, you need to open this email before Thursday in order for it to be valuable, or before tonight in order for it to be valuable. Here's an example. Version A says, it will be given to you. So a bit of mystery. I don't really know where this is going. It's for me specifically, but I'll have to open to find out. But adding this relevant indicator word in version B, it's still mysterious, coming tomorrow. I don't know what it is. I'll have to open it up to find out. But now I have a reason to open it now instead of later, because clearly I'm going to miss something if I wait until tomorrow. Adding that time relevance led to a 13% increase in email opens. Here's another example. One thing remains versus this Sunday. Both cases, I don't really know what is next, but in version B, I know that I have a limited window to open this email for it to be relevant, and it led to almost a 6% increase in email opens. One more for you. Did you eat too much last week? This is actually a Giving Tuesday email. Did you eat too much last week? So talking about Thanksgiving that had just happened versus what's special about today. This is an interesting one. Version B led to a 5.5% increase in email opens. They both use these time relevant words, but I would submit to you that version A talks about something that happened in the past. I can't change what happened in the past. And why would I think that how much I ate last week makes a big difference on me today or me this week? But what's special about today? Oh, is there something going on today? Oh, maybe I need to be informed. I need to open this email to find out what is special about today. It's relevant because it's happening now, I haven't missed it. Where version B is probably two things going on. I'm not super interested in what happened last week, but also you don't need to be worried about how much I ate on Thanksgiving. That's none of your business. Use these different time relevant indicator words to help someone understand that you need to open this now, or there's a limited time to open this for it to be relevant. To activate this element, you have to use a word that implies your email is going to cover something recent or newsworthy. Again, those time relevant indicator words, days of the week, this morning, this evening, etc. Now, element number 5 is authenticity. And this one's tricky. It's a little bit difficult because you can do everything right by having lots of claims of value in your subject line and then making sure that it's mysterious. You're not giving everything away, and you're adding you, and you're making it sound personal, or trying your best to, and you're using these time relevant words. But if it comes across like the sham wow guy, or like some sort of salesperson that's trying to push you into buying something or making a donation or doing something you didn't set out to do, if it feels inauthentic, you may ruin all of the good work that you've done with the other 4 elements. Let's look at some examples. Version A, sent from Jacinta Tegman from World Concern. The subject line says today. Version B says, don't wait another minute. They're two very different subject lines, where version B led to a 28% decrease in email opens. Sounds like some form of marketing or sales or something. It's like an urgent deadline, and you just want me to take some action and probably give you money. Version A sounds like a human conversation. They both focus on time, relevance, and urgency, but version A sounds believable and human and authentic, where version B sounds opportunistic. You see the difference. Here's another example. And this one, as well, is a little bit more holistic, where you have the sender in version A, Brian Bollinger from Texas State Historical Association. Version B, the sender is just Brian. Even in the sender, which one is more authentic? We looked at the very beginning of this webinar at how sending from a person can lead to more opens, and it's because it's more believable, it's more human. People give to people, not to email machines, and not to robots that are sending them emails on an automated drip series. The subject line of version A says, are you with us? Only a few hours remain. It's a heightened level of urgency, but it doesn't sound super conversational. It sounds maybe like you're just trying to get me to give before a deadline. Version B, sent from a person only, so it's more authentic, with a subject line that's not quite as pushy. It is important that we remember. It's more authentic, it's more believable, it's more human, it's more empathetic, and it led to a 58% increase in email opens. Here's one more. Version A, bringing the greatest message in a generation versus an invitation. Version B is authentic, it's warm, it's inviting, and it led to a 44% increase in email opens. To activate this element of authenticity, you need to avoid phrases that come across as either opportunistic or self-centered. And again, this one can be really tricky because as you've worked so hard to work all the different keywords in to try to make it mysterious and make sure it's packing in value and make sure it's personal and make sure it's relevant, we tend to get attached to our words, and it's very personal to us. And so for us to look at all the hard work we've done and say, doesn't sound like a human, is really difficult to do when we're assessing our own work. So you may have to go share your new subject line with a team member, a staff member, or even just a friend to get their feedback and have them read it out loud and tell you, does this sound like a human, or does this sound self-centered, or does it sound opportunistic? Is it authentic? Is it believable? Or is it more like a salesperson? You might need some help to authenticate your subject line. Here are your 5 steps. So I think it would be a miss. Let me go back one. I think it would be a miss if I just shared some of these principles and kind of theory with you. Because what I ultimately hope that you can do is take these and apply them and actually lead to more opens that lead to more donations. It's our mission to equip you as best as we can with what works to increase giving so we can increase generosity together. So I want to give you some specific steps that you can take to apply these different mental levers to your subject lines. So step number 1 is this. What I want you to do, whether you're using a pen and paper or you're writing it on a note on your computer in a Word doc or something like that, I want you to write at the subject line with the primary focus on the benefit to your donor. What's valuable that's in this email that my donor can get a quick win from or benefit from right away? Now, I want you to write out everything, because there may be multiple claims of value in your email. There may be multiple different messaging angles and things like that. So I want you to write out a really, really, really long subject line that you're never, ever going to send because it's way too long. But get all the claims of value out there. That's kind of your starting place. And then you're going to start to edit it down. So step number 2, rewrite it so that you don't completely give the topic away. You're still introducing value and utility, but you're not giving away everything. Again, it's the difference between study the Gospel of John or a special gift. Add some level of mystery to it. Then number 3, I want you to take your mysterious value-packed subject line and add a recency cue. Is there a time-relevant indicator word that you can insert into the subject line to make it feel more urgent or more relevant to today? Give them a reason to open it now as opposed to putting it off later. Number 4, add these made-for-you cues. Either insert the word you in a natural way, insert the first name in a natural way, or rewrite it so the tone feels more personal, or maybe all 3. And then finally, check to make sure it doesn't come across as self-centered or inauthentic. Again, you might have to share this with a colleague, share this with a peer, share it with a friend, share it with a staff member, and get their input on, does this feel like a human being would say this to another human being that they care about? Those are your 5 steps. To help walk you through these 5 steps, I put this worksheet together. You can get it at nextstaffer.com/subject line, all one word, subject line. And you have these 5 steps written out here, but in the right column, I tried to put some different keywords that can sort of prompt some new ideas for you as you're working through your subject line. So different ideas of things that can provide value and what can invoke a little bit of mystery. What phrases could you work from? Different time-relevant words, ways to use you or your or personalization. So you can use this tool every time you sit down to write a subject line to make sure you're using as many of these levers as you can. You don't have to use all of them, but as many as you can to write a more effective subject line. Last thing, before we have some Q&A time, is I'm wondering how you would improve the subject line in this email. Knowing these 5 different levers that you can sort of pull in your copy and in your messaging, I'm wondering how would you improve this email? This is an example. We did some training with PBS, and I thought this email really stuck out as just like kind of a great one to work from. So I'll give you a moment to look at this. And then I want you to put in the chat, what things could you do in the subject line to improve it based on these 5 key levers. The subject line says, I'll read it out for you. It says, now is the time to renew your KCTS9 membership. So feel free to put your ideas in the chat if you are feeling brave enough. And while you do that, I want to point one thing out. It's sent from KCTS9. That's the sender. We talked about how we should be sending these emails from a real human being. But the email is actually already sent from a human. There is this whole signature line down here. It says, with much gratitude, Rob Dunlop. Got his picture. It's personal. It's attempting to be personal. Well, what if you just change the sender to be from Rob? He already signed it. Let's put it in the sender line. It's been proven to lead to more opens and better engagement. So now that we have a better sender name, what can we do in the subject line? I see Brenda says, stop at now, now is the time. That's an interesting idea. We're really trying to evoke that time indicator and urgency relevance. That's a great idea. It's a great start. I want to show you how you can apply these 5 steps to try to evoke mystery, utility, recency, you, and authenticity. And we'll just work from this existing subject line. So let's take a step back. We'll zoom out and we'll write out the subject line focusing on the value to the reader. If we look back at this email, you can see it's all about renewing your membership. You need to renew today. Your membership expires soon. You get different membership benefits by being a member of KCTS9. So what if in the subject line, we just tried to put that all out there? We said, your KCTS9 membership is about to expire. Renew it so you don't lose all of your benefits! Exclamation point. It's really important. We put this all out there, but you're never going to send this as a subject line. It's way too long. Your recipient is only going to see maybe like the first third of this in their inbox. Depends on if they're on desktop or mobile or wherever they're looking. But probably about the first third is what's going to show up. So we're never going to send this. There's too much going on. And it doesn't meet these other criteria we've looked at. But it's a starting place. Getting those claims of value out so you can start to make it more mysterious. And that's step number 2. Rewrite the subject line to not completely give away the topic. So you're going to start just crossing some stuff out. I'm going to do that on your screen here. And get rid of a bunch of stuff. So we're going to start to say you are about to lose all of your benefits. You see it's simplified, but the same core element of value is there. And it's mysterious because I don't know, why am I going to lose all my benefits? And maybe I've forgotten what my benefits are. I need to find that out. When am I going to lose them? I'm not sure. I need to open this email to find out those details and see what's really going on here. But what if in step number 3, we could actually add one of these recency cues? So very simply, we can just say, you will lose your benefits tomorrow. Now there's a time frame in which I need to take an action. I can't wait till next week. I need to actually open this tomorrow or before tomorrow so that I don't lose my benefits. Step number 4, I want you to add a made for you cue. So very simply in this one, we're just going to insert the first name right there. Hannah, you will lose your benefits tomorrow. Now it's personal. I know this isn't just some mass email sent out to everybody losing their benefits tomorrow. It's just for me. It's just for Hannah, the personal reminder. And then finally, you want to make sure it doesn't sound opportunistic or self-centered. You want to make sure it's authentic. So I'm not going to have this exclamation point. I'm going to get rid of that. We're going to change our tone a little bit. So it says, Hannah, your benefits run out tomorrow. Personal, it's a human, authentic reminder. It still has an element of mystery, value, relevancy. I need to take an action on this now. Again, you can grab this worksheet to walk you through those 5 steps every single time you sit down to write a subject line, and it will help you come up with one that you can maybe test against your original one. If you're still like, I'm not sure how these will work, or I don't know how they'll work for us. So help you come up with one that you can actually run a test and see how this works for your organization in your emails with your donors. So again, grab this, nextchapter.com/subject line. It's for free. You can use it every time you write an email. And then finally, because you have attended today, I want to make sure that you know about this course. This course used to be a paid course. It was like $2.99. You can work through it and earn your certification in email fundraising optimization. We have a sponsor, Kindful, who has made this available to you for free. So if you go to nextchapter.com/email course, you can activate the course for free today, because there is a whole bunch that we didn't talk about today that goes into improving and optimizing your email fundraising and your email campaigns. So this course is going to help you create a better impression in the inbox, not just with the subject line, not just with the sender, but also your preview text and all the different things that go into the email envelope, if you will. We're going to learn how to write more effective copy, how to craft design that leads towards donations, how to optimize your page that you're landing people on, and then how to actually acquire more people and more subscribers to your email list so you can keep growing your online giving. So again, you can activate this for free at nextchapter.com/email course and dive deep and earn your certification in email fundraising optimization. Here's the brain again. Thank you so much. This has been a blast. I think we have a little bit of time for some Q&A.
We absolutely do have some time for some Q&A. Awesome. Nathan, thank you so much for presenting those 5 mental levers. I think I might actually use some of those for Father's Day to see if I could drum up some intrigue on that special day.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have a few minutes left, so we're going to get to some questions. I am just going to quickly share my screen. Excellent. I believe that worked perfectly for once. So we have a question from Lizzie. Would you tweak your tips in any way for a small nonprofit?
That's a good question. It comes up a lot. And I would just say no right out of the gate. If you have different ideas as to why your audience might behave differently, then you can always test it. But these things we're testing have been tested, not just with large organizations, but also with smaller ones, specifically through our training and through our workshops and courses. We have organizations of all different sizes that are putting these learnings to the test and seeing results. So I would take these worksheets, or that worksheet and this formula, and put it to work to test new subject lines and test into learnings about your donors. What I never want someone to walk away from one of these webinars with is thinking like this is the end all be all of something, whether it's a donation page template or it's a subject line template. All these things are better starting places. They're things based on learnings from tests that we have run with different organizations, with different donor bases and things like that. But there's always room to grow and room to improve. So you might start here, and then maybe you'll learn something about your specific donors that's going to prompt a new idea as to what you can test in your subject line. So use this as a starting place to learn more about your donors specifically, and then you may uncover some new trends with your audience as well.
Yeah, I think experimentation is a great way to combat any problems you might have with a specific audience. Miranda asks, any stats on what works better, personalized name or use of you? Risk versus reward in terms of confidence in your data, especially if you're communicating with less engaged folks.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if we've done like a true test that's going to isolate, we inserted the first name versus just saying you. I could go back and look, and I will go back and look because I'm curious now. But I would submit to you that those are likely not going to make a huge difference, and it really just comes down to how are you naturally using those words in an effective way to create the feeling of personalization. Maybe at scale with a large enough file, you might see a significant difference between one or the other. But your question and your comment about risk versus reward with the confidence of your data is a good one. If you don't feel like you can confidently insert the first name, because maybe you only have first names for half of your file, or maybe all of them are misspelled, or none of them have capital first letters, and it's going to maybe hurt you more than help you, then just err on the side of you, and then maybe see what you can do to start cleaning up your database. But yeah, I'll go back and look and see if I can find an experiment, and then maybe it's worth testing to see specifically what is the difference between those two.
Absolutely. Katie says, I've been hesitant to write subject lines that utilize personalized names for the entries in our database that may not have the name field filled. Is this something I should continue taking into consideration?
Most tools, and Katie, I don't know which tools you are using, so that makes it a challenge, but most tools will give you the opportunity to insert some sort of default text. So if you do only have the first names for half of your email subscribers, and then 50% you don't, you just have their email, most tools give you some default language. So instead of saying, hi, Jack, it might just say, hi, friend. I do hypothesize and wonder, if you just call somebody friend right out of the gate like that, does it imply and tell them that you don't actually know them? And maybe it feels less personal. So maybe you could actually set it up so that your default, if you don't have those names, is actually just maybe nothing at all. Maybe it just says hi instead of hi friend. But experiment with what your tool can do in terms of having like a default value, because obviously you wouldn't want to say like hi and then have like a big blank space or a random string of characters or something like that, which happens every now and again. So you do need to be careful.
Yeah. Earl, I believe, responding to one of your examples, said, that is negative messaging. I could be likely to dump this one in the trash. So do you have a response to perhaps emails that elicit a sense of intrigue, but also might have a negative connotation? Is there any way to balance those two realities?
So Earl, with the question specifically, I don't know what the example was. But again, going back even to that, kind of what I said when we were looking at that survey data, is that the way that we tend to say that we act is not often the same as how we behave and the things that we actually do. In many cases, this question comes up often. It's like, what if I don't like it, or I don't personally resonate with that? You have to put that to the test. There may be a true underlying hypothesis and a good reason as to why you think that might not work, but you have to test it to really know. And I would always err on the side of what the data is telling you works. And if you have different data that's going to make a different argument, then you have to test that. But I wouldn't rely on your gut feeling or your gut instinct, because that may be fundamentally different than the majority of the donors that are opening your emails. And there may also be something in there too, just a kind of a broader concept is we as fundraisers and we as marketers tend to have a lot of insider information into our causes and into our organizations that our donors don't. So we have to be empathetic to where they're at and not assume that they know things that we do. And just because we interact with something on our own websites in one way doesn't mean that our donors are doing the same thing. So again, we have to always go back to the data and see what works.
Absolutely. And Earl, to clarify, said the example of threatening to lose benefits would not be motivating. However, in response to that, if you don't mind, Nathan, I would say, when we think about Lizzie's original question about the small nonprofits, the audience of a nonprofit would be fundamentally different from that of an audience that is managing benefits. So I believe that the principles that you've outlined could be used for nonprofits and therefore would not be used in a threatening way, unless your nonprofit is a collection of bounty hunters or perhaps any sort of mob sharks that you're advocating for. So keep that in mind. Keep that as a tool in your tool belt.
Yeah. Well, even the idea, like using the word threaten in this case, we kind of walked through that series of how to use these 5 different levers. And at one point, it did feel kind of threatening. And then by the end, we're trying to make sure it feels authentic and human and remove. It's not a threat. It's a human reminder that you're going to lose this. And Earl, you might not be the KCTS 9 member that has all these member benefits, but Hannah does, and maybe she values them and she uses them and she's actively participating, but she doesn't know her membership's going to expire. So again, in your case, it may not be motivating to you, but it may be very motivating to your donor who benefits from that specific membership.
Absolutely. Carly Hill, we still don't know if she's not related to you. Can you give an example of a subject line specifically for an appeal, an end of year giving campaign, for example?
Sure. Well, we did look at the one giving Tuesday example, but as you get close to the end of the year, it does get a little bit challenging because we actually do some year-end research every year. We kind of go through this aggregate email inbox that we have with thousands of year-end emails that come in during that midway through November through the end of the year time period. And as you get close to the end of the year, everybody says the same thing, even though most people are using like these ideas of how do you increase urgency. And even if you're trying to use personalization and things like that, everybody ends up saying the same thing at that time and during those campaigns, which is the clock's ticking or TikTok or time's running out or whatever, talking about the deadline that's approaching December 30th at midnight. And I do wonder if everybody says the same thing, even if everyone's using all these 5 mental levers to try to boost opens, maybe it doesn't matter, maybe it's not effective at the time because all of your inbox looks exactly the same. How do you stand out? But taking that hyper-personal approach, whether it's just simple reminders and things, that's what we've found to be most effective during that time, is not really focus on this hyper-urgent angle. You can still mention it. I think one of the most effective experiments we've seen that I kind of have in my back pocket for different slides is saying TikTok as a human way of just like prompting this reminder of the end of year deadline, as opposed to throwing it in your face and say, hey, the deadline is coming. So just trying to be more personal and more authentic. But again, that time gets really tricky and is actually pretty different with really any of your fundraising than the rest of the year, where there's lower motivations and less of this inherent deadline.
Tracy Robertson adds, our nonprofit historical association members receive 4 newsletters and a quarterly magazine. The latter is a huge draw. Some describe membership as a subscription to that. So I think Tracy from Canton, New York, 75 miles north of Watertown. Thank you for putting in where you're from, Tracy. I think she's describing a great way to break through the noise, especially around those end of year periods. I know nonprofits that I've worked with have also sent handwritten messages. I believe you were talking, you use that in passing as an example. So in addition to these great levers that we've learned, there are some amazing ways to break through the noise as well.
For sure.
And yes, I have a question.
Okay.
What are some good topics that really drive clicks? I know you've talked strategies and different ways to utilize topics. David, who runs our newsletter, he's talked about how dogs always get clicks. Put a puppy in an email, you'll get a click. Do you know anything else like that really drives engagement?
Well, I don't have a specific topic for you. And again, it's going to wildly vary from cause to cause and organization to organization. But I guess the one thing I would say about that is to always be cautious of what is going to drive clicks versus what is going to drive the conversions you care about. Because oftentimes what we see is that there's a lot of things you can do in your email that can increase clicks in a pretty significant margin. But some of those things will actually decrease donations and decrease conversions. Because you can be, if you're mysterious in your ultimate call to action, so if you actually want someone to go to a page and donate, but you say something like, stand with us, that oftentimes is going to increase clicks because someone's like, what does that mean? I'm going to click this and I'm going to go to a page. but you haven't actually prompted me for what the real call to action is. And now I feel a little bit like it's a discontinuous, disjointed experience. I want to stand with you. Oh, but you just want my money. But if you're abundantly clear in that call to action as to make a donation today in order to support this cause, we see that often leads to fewer clicks, but oftentimes more donations and more revenue. So you can try to play the topic game and the clickbait game and all that stuff, but it doesn't always lead to meaningful metrics, even if it leads to more clicks.
Great point. I believe that is all our questions. So that concludes our session for today. Nathan, thank you again for all of your marketing insights, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today and providing us with stimulating questions